we're going to make a pedestal bowl, and for $7.10, you know, you can also hand build a pedestal bowl if you want. So here's an example of a hand-built pedestal bowl. If you pick up your bowl while it's wet, this is what happens. It becomes oval. So always remember, as you're working with anything that's wide and thin, that you need to support it with both hands like this rather than grabbing it there. I'm going to show you some examples of wheel-thrown pedestal bowls. So here's an example of a pedestal down here on a bowl. Here's a wide open one that has space to put fruit or grapes, whatever. Pedestal bowl. Here's a bisqueware pedestal bowl. And I'll pass that around so you guys can take a look at that. Another bisqueware pedestal bowl. And one more pedestal bowl. If I can talk to you about the cross section of the pedestal bowl for a few minutes. Here is the cross section of the bowl part itself. When you're attaching the pedestal on and making the pedestal, how far should you bring out the bottom of the foot so that it supports this wide rim? So what I have found that works pretty well when you're doing this is if you take the middle of the pedestal bowl, find the rim, find halfway between those two, have the pedestal foot go out to there. As the bowl is taller or wider, you need to bring it out a little bit more than that. So if you have a really tall foot on there, bring it out more. And that's just a simple guideline to go by. I just, from observation, I looked at the ones that worked that I have made because someone asked me, what is the formula for the foot? And as far as I know, there's no formula. So I just observed what I had made and what works. Here's the bowl part of the pedestal bowl, and we'll trim that in a few minutes. But this is what I'm going to be making the pedestal for right now. The pedestal can either be made in a separate part and just attached on to the bottom. You can even hand build a foot if you'd like and put it on a thrown bowl. Today what I'm going to show you is how to throw a pedestal onto the bottom of a trimmed bowl. So this is going to have a couple stages that you go through. So this is what I'm going to be looking at to make a pedestal for. So let's use that rule we just talked about. Here's the rim of the bowl, here's the center. So about halfway between is right here. So I know my foot has to come out to that. Since I like to flare my feet out and have a smaller part connect and then it flare out, I'm going to say that my foot diameter needs to be about this big to begin with. Taking the calipers, and I'm going to measure that and keep that measurement so when I'm throwing the base I know about how big of a cylinder I need. So we'll get back to that in a few minutes. But remember, you're going to flare out from there most likely. So it can be a little bit smaller than the halfway points I was talking about. Take a chunk of clay, center it on the wheel. And this is probably way too much clay for the foot, but it's always better to have more than you need than too small of an amount. So referring back to our measurement, we see that this is largely enough clay to work with. Open up the mass. And even though we don't really need to have a base in this, as you're throwing it, you want to keep a little skin of clay on the bat. Otherwise, as you start pulling, the clay will just lift up off of the bat. So leave a little bit of skin in there so that it will stay on the wheel as we're doing our pull-up. Recenter. Going to measure it again. Now I'm just going to throw a thick cylinder. So take away a little bit of clay here. Remember when you're doing this to put water in that moat area so that that excess comes off very easily. And then just bring up the walls of this cylinder a bit. You're not going to make it real thin now because you're going to continue to throw it once we get it on the base of the pot. Undercut. I'm going to cut the inside out now because I'm done throwing for the time being. Add water to the outside, a little water to the inside so that this is easy to wire off. So we're going to use this in a few minutes after we trim the bottom of our bowl.